Get ready for Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the 30-minute show packed with an hour's worth of information, bringing you familiar guests on important issues such as immigration, education, the Middle East, culture, religion, and the changing worldviews of Americans and the world. You've seen her on Fox News, you've read her on the World Wide Web. Now here's Sharon.
For such a time as this.
Freeing the minds of the brainwashed masses.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Changing Worldviews today. The San Francisco Chronicle reports that Apple, quote, must increasingly rely on new products to regenerate growth. And the newspaper also learned that Apple is heavily exploring medical devices, specifically sensor technology that can help predict heart attacks. Apple has been scouring the globe looking for deals, snatching up everything from search engines and data analysis to mapping software and motion tracking chips. The list of those caught up in the global surveillance net cast by the NSA and its overseas partners, from social media users to foreign heads of state, now includes another entity, as reported by the New York Times, U.S. lawyers. A top secret document obtained by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden shows that a U.S. law firm was monitored while representing a foreign government in trade disputes with the United States. The disclosure offers a rare glimpse of a specific instance of Americans ensnared by the eavesdroppers at NSA and is of particular interest because U.S. lawyers with clients overseas have expressed growing concern that their confidential communications could be compromised by such surveillance. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel said on Saturday that she would talk to French President François Hollande about erecting a European communications network to avoid emails and other data passing through the United States. Merkel, who visits France this week, has been pushing for greater data protection following reports about mass surveillance by the United States, i.e. via the NSA. And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's show, cyber-terrorism and how it affects not only our nation, but us as individuals. My guest, author Ron Rhodes, of his latest book, Cyber-Meltdown. Very important information as we talk about an issue that affects every single one of us and that even our own government says we are in danger of even more than ever before. We're going to discuss not only how over-dependency on technology puts our nation at risk for cyber attacks as well as us as individuals, but also how all of this threat may set the stage for end-time events. All that right after this.
You're listening to Sharon Hughes, coming to you from the Wild Wild West, and we mean wild.
Well, thank you for staying with me, ladies and gentlemen. I was listening to The Blaze the other night, and they were talking about in their opening news headlines about how Iranian cyber attack, if you recall, on U.S. Navy Marine Corps internet site in September was worse than thought. It actually took 4 months to undo what the quote intruder in the cyber attack did on their largest unclassified computer network. Hackers were monitoring voice, video, and data communication. 2 years ago, the United States said that Iran did not have such capability. Well, they were either we were wrong or they attained the capability to do such things. Well, as you'll hear from my guest, Ron Rhodes, this is not just happening to military internet sites, but to other departments of our government, to corporations, companies, and individuals. We did a pre-record with Ron a few days ago, and here's that interview. Ron Rhodes. We've had him on the show several times before, but today to talk about his latest book, Cyber-Meltdown. Did you know that 73% of people in the world have experienced some form of cyber crime, while 55% have been victims of computer viruses? Only 13% today feel safe or very safe while online. And cyber experts warn that an electronic Pearl Harbor could be inflicted on the United States in a mere 15 minutes. Can you believe that? Well, my guest, Ron Rhodes, is president of Reasoning from the Scriptures Ministries. He's author of over 60 books, including a 3 silver medallion winner. And also he has been the keynote speaker at conferences across the United States and is regularly addressing contemporary cultural issues that are of concern to everyone in the church, outside of the church, regularly online and on air across the nation. He majored in systematic theology and graduated with high honors from Dallas Theological Seminary and also many other degrees. And if we had time, I would read you the titles of all 60 of his books because the titles in themselves are intriguing. But Ron, welcome back to Changing Worldviews. So glad to have you with us today to talk about a very real threat that I think the American people are becoming more and more aware of, but maybe not so knowledgeable of.
Well, I think that that's perhaps the case. I think that a lot of times there's just a lot of people who are unaware of what can be done with computers today. You know, when I think about my in-laws, for example, they're still using the stone and chisel used back in Moses' time. So they're completely unaware of what's going on in terms of computers and cyberspace. And, you know, the computer illiteracy of most people is pretty high. It's not a matter of everybody having to become a computer expert, but the danger is that even if you don't regularly use a computer yourself, well, you could still be in danger. And I'm sure that we're going to talk about some of those dangers today, but let me just sort of whet your appetite, if I might. Our own president recently said on a global broadcast, in other words, to the nations around the world, that if the United States receives a significant cyber attack, all options are on the table, including a response from the U.S. military with a physical attack. In other words, our own government is taking it so seriously that our government has warned the world that if there is a significant cyber attack against the United States, we're going to use bombs and bazookas and jets and ships and tanks and the whole works. Wow. And so that ought to sort of let you know that it is a serious issue that we need to deal with.
That brings me into this information that I just ran across today. It was published on last Friday about DARPA, and the title of the article is Future Government Surveillance Will Be Like Apple's Siri, and they're talking about the U.S. military's Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency. In other words, DARPA has indicated that future government surveillance programs will operate much like Siri does on today's iPhones, in that NSA people will be able to interact with algorithms that become smarter as they know what to expect and so forth and so on. And Dan Kaufman, who is director of the Information Innovation Office at DARPA, said, quote, imagine somebody stationed at an intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance facility looking for visual data of interest. Today, this looks like one person in front of a bank of screens not really seeing anything. In the future, it looks like a person interacting with an algorithm that becomes smarter about you and what you're looking for as you interact with it. So I just bring that up to say that we're not talking about old-time kind of computer hacking maybe 10 years ago, or even some malicious viruses, as awful as those can be. We're talking about not just our government and DARPA, but other governments that you bring out in your book quite a bit, such as China and so forth, that are hacking into the United States government agencies' computer systems. And so when you up the ante with this kind of technology I just described, you know, there's no telling what kind of information they can get from governments. But then if the NSA has our information, these other countries are getting it on individuals, or could as well, right?
Well, right. And, you know, you'd like to think that when foreign governments have talented hackers, you'd like to think that, well, maybe they can break into some low-level computers and really not find that much, you know, information and material. But the fact is that our computers at the highest level of the Pentagon and our Defense Department have been hacked. In fact, our next generation fighter, you know, the fighter that's supposed to be protecting us for the next 15 or 20 years, Tons of information has been hacked online by foreign governments, and the suspicion is it's the Chinese government. We also know for a fact that not long ago it was discovered that talented Chinese hackers were actually able to activate both the camera on computers and the microphone on the computers in United States embassies around the world. And this went on for several years. Now, you might think to yourself that, well, the average person doesn't have to worry about stuff like that. Well, you know what? You really do. I've got a good friend. I won't mention his name, but he's a very famous apologist who's authored many, many books. And he told me about an experience that he just recently had. Some hacker was actually able to tap into his computer, activate the the camera on the front of the laptop computer, took pictures and sent those pictures back to him. And these are pictures from his bedroom. Now, I don't know about you, but that got me so riled up that I've got a little Post-it note over my camera now. It's not a matter of being paranoid, but, you never know what's going on out there with those people.
That is amazing. I have heard such stories, but not so explicit. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.
Exposing the worldviews behind the political, cultural, and ideological wars being waged in our nation and world, Sharon packs an hour's worth of information into every half hour with news you can use.
Academia is often the wellspring of race hatred. This is something that we need to recognize. Eugenics, indeed, was a campaign to create a master race by do-gooders and progressives. They were attempting to create a utopia.
What's ending up happening is that Christians who say, I don't care about issues, they realize that's what's being used to silence the gospel. If they can silence the truth, they will silence the gospel.
You're being a watchwoman on the wall, Sharon. I say that with all sincerity. Appreciate what you're doing to sound the alarm, and we need more shows like yours.
Changing Worldviews is funded entirely through the tax-deductible donations of our supporters. If you've not done so already, renew your active support today. And if you're new to Changing Worldviews, would you consider helping us with a donation, becoming a monthly partner to help get the truth out and tell the world the side of the story that mainstream media doesn't report? Thank you so much ahead of time for supporting our efforts.
Well, when you've got in the United States a single cyber attack, for instance, from North Korea that knocked out the websites of the U.S. Treasury, the Secret Service, the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Transportation, also hit the websites of NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange and so forth. These are going to be pretty sophisticated systems, and for them to be able to hack in, it makes me feel as just a regular talk radio show host that gets a lot of information online and everywhere else as we do research, or just the average person that uses online for buying whatever, I don't know, their vitamin pills. Who feels safe anymore?
Well, it is a good question, and it's a relevant question, because the fact is that we have this sense of privacy. We have this sense of being safe when we type things online. But let me just give you a couple examples of how we're endangered in all of this. There are some very, very talented hackers who like to launch these specific attacks against individual people. What they do is they have sophisticated programs that will actually search through Facebook, find out the name of your friends, and then they end up sending emails to you that are allegedly from one or more of your Facebook friends, and it might say something like this: Hey, Ron, I came across this fascinating article that I just knew you'd be interested in. Here's the link for it. And if you click on that link, it will take you to some interesting article, but at the same time, in the background, it is downloading a program onto your computer. And that program is called a keyboard logger. And what the keyboard logger does is that it watches everything you type, so that the next time you sign into your bank account, they're watching. Now, you want to know another way they're doing it today? Another way that they're doing it today, especially among non-Christians out there, is through the pornographic industry. There's a lot of porn online, and a lot of times when people will click on a naughty picture that they shouldn't be looking at, They have no idea that actually in the background, a keyboard logger is downloading to their computer, and they're being able to watch your bank accounts and all that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying this to make people paranoid. I'm saying this because this is the reality that we are facing today. And that's why it is wise to talk about it like we're doing today.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Some of the materials that was sent to me from your publicist or your publisher regarding this book, Cyber-Meltdown, and ladies and gentlemen, want you to get a hold of this book because it's very concise and has tons of information that's going to be very helpful and practical for you. But some of the information, for instance, I wanted to ask you about these logic bombs. You want to tell everybody what that is, what those are?
Yeah, a logic bomb is basically a reference to a certain amount of software code. It's like a small computer program, a software program that can actually take control of a computer or respond to an instruction given by a foreign government. Now, here's what's very significant about that. Our own government computer experts have discovered that there are logic bombs planted by foreign governments all throughout our electrical grid throughout the United States. Now, a lot of people don't realize that our electrical grid is controlled by computers. Mm-hmm. You know, they have computers that control the flow of electricity into communities. And here's the thing. If it's true that these logic bombs or this computer code has been planted in our electrical grid by foreign governments, what that ultimately means is that all the foreign government has to do is to flick a switch and given a computer instruction to turn off all our electricity instantly, just like that. Wow. And so that's why our own experts are working through all of this and trying to get rid of it. But you see, the thing is that when you're looking at computer programs that run our country, like, for example, our electrical grid, you're talking about millions of lines of computer code. It's not just a matter of going in there and, clipping out a couple of obvious things that don't belong there. It's planted in there in a very stealth kind of a way. And, it's a dangerous thing. One of the things that has been suggested by those in control of our government is that if another government intended on attacking the United States, the first thing that they would do before sending in their own military would be to launch a cyber attack. And part of that cyber attack would involve, for example, disabling the electrical current that flows to our homes. So just imagine you're sitting there one day and all of a sudden your computer goes off, your TV goes off, your radio goes off. There's no way for you to communicate. And if all of the transponders are off, that means that your cell phones are not going to be able to communicate with other people. What would you do? Right. Well, it's going to cause confusion. It's going to cause disorientation. And that's one of the things that foreign enemies want to do. They want to disorient the enemy so that they will be easy to overcome. That's what's got our own government concerned about all this.
Very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, the last time Ron was on the show, we were talking about his book, Northern Storm Rising, and that was about the coalition of nations that are mounting against Israel. And Ron, in that interview, which we actually re-aired the part specifically where you were talking about the danger of an EMP strike. So the EMP is something that's, done up in the cosmos and does what you explained, but now we've got this logic bomb idea. So,
well, they've got all the bases covered. See, they could either just send in a instruction to these logic bombs planted in our electrical grid for the electricity to turn off, but they've also got that option of the electromagnetic pulse attack, and what that means is that they'll launch a nuclear bomb up to about 300 miles in the atmosphere and detonate it, and that will fry all electrical components within the line of sight of that bomb. Mm-hmm. So if it was 300 miles up, that would cover all of the U.S. and, most of Canada and some other outlying areas. And so, by the way, and that's not something you can fix overnight. There have been testimony by experts before our own Congress indicating that it could actually be up to 1 or 2 years before things could get restored electrically. And that means one thing. overnight we're back to a horse and buggy in terms of transportation.
Wow.
If nothing electrical would work, that's including buses and cars and jets and automobiles and all of that, that means that the transportation of food stops, the transportation of medicine stops, and if you don't know how to plant seeds and make your own food in the garden, well, you might be in a little bit of trouble there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and ladies and gentlemen, we kind of just have covered a broad brush of some of the topics that we will be covering with Ron Rhodes to give you kind of a taste of some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But whether it has to do with on the individual level, like you have described here, or it has to do on our nation, it has to do with our electrical grids and so forth, the reality is, and get some of these facts that, Ron has provided through his book, the number of security events per month related to the United States Senate alone, get this, is now about 1.8 billion. Yes, billion. And there are 13.9 million computer attacks launched each day against the Senate Securities Operations Center. So it is amazing what is going on. We're going to take a quick break here, and I've got tons of questions to ask Ron that are going to, I think, answer a lot of questions you might have. We're going to take a quick break. Less than 2 minutes, we'll be back, and more of what Ron is talking about. Stay with us.
And now, with a look at what's happening on the legal front, the president of the Pacific Justice Institute, Brad Dacus.
If you've been listening to The Legal Edge for a while, you know Pacific Justice Institute has been battling for nearly 2 years now to protect the freedom of Christian counselors. These freedoms came under attack when the California legislature banned licensed therapists, psychologists, and others from helping minors overcome same-sex attraction. Well, recently, the Federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with the state of California, claiming that professional counseling, even in church, is not protected by the First Amendment. Well, PJI is now appealing this decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. We appreciate your prayers. I'm Brad Dacus.
To find out more about The Legal Edge, call 916-857-6900 or log on at pacificjustice.org.
I'd like to encourage you to get a hold of this month's special offer. Not only do you get a great resource, but it also helps us pay for airtime. And this month, for a donation of $25 or more to Changing Worldviews, I would love to send you the 4-part series on CD, What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran, with modern-day historian and author William Federer. It's one of our most popular listened to shows online as we talk about a history of Islam and the United States and what that means.
It would catapult the heads of the Christians into the city like cannonballs, the ones that he had killed. I mean, wow. And he saw himself as literally killing the infidel. He thought he was serving Allah. So the thing is that when people say, well, jihad is just this personal struggle, it's like, where were you 1,400 years ago? Why didn't you tell Muhammad and the caliphs that it was just supposed to be a personal struggle? Obviously, the historical record of the last 1,400 years shows that the majority of Muslims have viewed it as a literal submission, conquering of the world.
Again, for a donation of $25 or more this month, your gift to Changing Worldviews will go directly to pay for airtime, and I would love to send you this outstanding resource. And you can get it by sending your check to Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750-624, Petaluma, California, 94975-0624, or you can order it online by going to changingworldviews.com, click on the donate button, one-time donation, and put in William Federer special offer. People are really enjoying having it. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. My guest today is Ron Rhodes, author of over 60 books. We're talking today about his latest, Cyber-Meltdown. Here's the byline: Bible prophecy and the imminent threat of cyber terrorism. Now, Ron, not too many folks are tying these two things together. We've got a lot of things tied to Bible prophecy or end times, but cyber terrorism, you want to just kind of jump in with that before we get into more meat of some of the threats that we are facing?
Well, sure. Sure. We know, for example, according to the book of Revelation, that in the end times, especially during that last 7 years of human history called the tribulation period, there will be a situation in which a malevolent being called the Antichrist comes into power, and he's not going to be called the Antichrist. He's going to be a very charismatic type of a leader who will come into control, and he will solve the Middle East problem. But one of the things that Revelation 13 tells us is that he will control the world economy, and that nobody will be able to buy or sell without submission to him. Now, when you think about it, there's only one way that the Antichrist could bring that about, and that is if the entire world was cashless. The only way he could absolutely control every person on earth is if we were cashless. In other words, we didn't use coins or dollar bills. Now, I believe that we're headed there right now. In fact, did you know that we're using 70% less cash today than we were a decade ago?
70% less?
70% less.
Wow.
The amount of electronic transactions has increased geometrically. The president of the Visa Corporation, the Visa card, says that it's entirely possible that within the next 5 years or so, you will be charged a surcharge in any establishment where you try to use cash. It's amazing what's going on in our world. Even as I speak, we're becoming cashless in our society, and it won't be long before everything else is cashless. When you drive down the highway or a tollway, money can automatically be taken out of your bank account to pay for it. Most people receive their paychecks online today. If you go on flights today, you can't use cash to buy sandwiches. You have to, they're cashless. They'll even tell you that they're cashless and that you have to use a credit card. And they're using these chips that they're putting in smartphones today that contain banking data. All you have to do is wave your phone in front of a gizmo at the store, and your purchase is complete. All of this has taken place today. So that's just one example of how cyber technology, if I might put it that way, cyber technology can relate to biblical prophecy.
Ron, thank you again so much. We're going to have you back on, especially this subject. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your work.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and may God bless each person that's listening to our conversation today.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ron. Well, we will have part 2 with Ron on Friday. In the meantime, this. Coming up on our next edition of Changing Worldviews is...
Let's say, like, you're a company and you want to shut down your competitor. Well, you could call up one of these guys or sign up online for them to launch an attack against your competitor's web. And the way that they do that is they use virtually thousands of computers to sign on to your competitor's website at the same time, thereby, because of the heavy volume, choking your competitor's website, because your competitor's website cannot possibly handle tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of computer hits all at once.
Encourage you to stay tuned every day, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday here on KDIA, and then, of course, on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday for our online live streamed show. In the meantime, let me encourage you to stay aware, stay awake, stay alert, because we are not only living in a changing world, but things are really heating up, and we need to be informed and know what's going on, and we also need to educate those in our family, our friends, and spheres of influence so that everyone will know the truth. And so until I see you next time, this is Sharon Hughes saying it like it is.
Thanks for listening to Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes. You can get more information on today's topic or order a CD of today's show by visiting changingworldviews.com or writing us at Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California, 94975-0624. You can also contact us at talk@changingworldviews.com. That's talk@changingworldviews.com. Our program is listener-supported, and we appreciate your tax-deductible donations to help us get the truth out on the important issues Sharon addresses on the show. So until next time, remember, stay alert, stay informed. We live in a changing world.